Hello and welcome back. Let's wrap up our discussion this week on exceptional testing and technical debt by actually discussing what it means to be agile in practice. This is going to tie in because really, if we don't understand what it means to be agile, giving team rules, the stakeholders, and how we move through our code, it's going to make things like technical debt a lot harder for us to manage and make sure that they get done effectively. All right. So agile in the real world does not mean that you can just do whatever you want, right? It doesn't mean, oh, we're really flexible, so we can just do whatever feels right. It's about fast feedback and organized feedback, not chaos, right? It's not a free-for-all. We're not saying that there's no planning and no deadlines. We're saying that we want small, testable chunks. We want to minimize our tech debt. We want that continuous communication, and we want our frequent delivery with very fast correction, or as fast as possible, right? When we're talking, even in our student teams, it's important that everybody kind of understands the different roles that may come up in their teams and sort of how these can help move things forward and keep things organized. So we have team leads, sometimes known, depending on the type of agile methodology you're using, as a scrum master. Sometimes those are separate roles, sometimes they're the same role, and their job is to keep things organized. They track tasks, they help people get unblocked by different pieces of work. There's of course the developers that are writing and testing the actual code, right? You're the builders of the product. We have the QA, so quality assurance, or the testers. These are individuals who might catch bugs, test edge cases, and give us really fast feedback before we go to, GA, like to the general public with our application. And then often this can be rolled into maybe a business analyst role or a team lead role, or in our student teams, this is just a role of its own, the documentation and Git upkeep. Not enough people recognize just how much work there is that goes into tracking issues, writing readmes, managing the version control, keeping things feeling clear. So even on your team as students, you may be wearing lots of different hats since you're all going to be developers, hopefully. But in addition to that, some of you may be in charge of keeping the group organized and making sure that people have what they need and have the information that they need to move forward and get their work done. You may be in charge of pulling down the main project and tracking bugs that you find in there. You may be in charge of doing the code reviews, going through it, looking for things like technical debt, looking for places where you need more test cases, or you may be in charge of the documentation. So making and tracking the issues in Git, making sure that they're up to date and being tracked appropriately, checking in with people, seeing if they need help tracking their issues, asking how long they worked on things so that it can be updated correctly. There's a lot of work that goes into making sure that your project feels organized so that somebody else can come in, be it a grader or a future dev, who can come in and understand what it is that you're doing in your project, how things are working, and how you're progressing. Now, we have this additional role here of this idea of stakeholders and getting feedback. And in the real world, there is a person or a group of people who will be your stakeholders, right? The people who have this invested interest in your product. Now here, again, who is the product owner? I mean, ultimately, it's your instructor or me, whoever's teaching you. They're the one who's setting the goals, who's reviewing your progress, and who's giving you the meaningful feedback that changes the course of your project, right? But you also have an invested interest in your project, so you also are stakeholders. You're setting goals within your own project. You're ensuring that the progress is coming along as you anticipate. You're building your own roadmap, and you're giving each other feedback. Now, when do we give this kind of feedback? We're going to try our best to do it. Minimum is our weekly check-ins, where we can do a sprint review, we can show off the pieces we've built with each other, we can set up these weekly meetings, we can explain what's not done yet and if there's reasons why, if we're blocked, if we haven't had time, if we're not sure what to do. There's lots of different reasons and they're all okay. And also we have these weekly check-ins so that we can get useful feedback to guide our next sprint. Now, depending on how long a sprint is, some teams use a week, some teams use 2 weeks, most teams don't use more than 2 weeks per iteration like that. You're going to do these sprint reviews with these little demos at the end of them. Within your group projects, your due dates are your sprint reviews, but that doesn't stop you from checking in with each other. So maybe you set half an hour aside a week to talk about the things that you have finished that week. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe your entire focus was drawn away from the group project because you had 4 exams. That's okay. But having those weekly check-ins, having half an hour set aside for each team member to present for 5 minutes on what they've done is immensely helpful. It's really, really going to help you sort of figure out where to go next, right? Figure out what needs to be done next and keep everybody honest, accountable, and on the same page. So we have a little saying at the bottom here, right? Demo what you did and own what you didn't. It's okay to not finish stuff. It's not okay to never do stuff, but it does happen. So be transparent and be proud of your progress, even if it's not all the way where you want to be. That's okay. That's part of this project, right? So that's sort of in the real world, and I kind of alluded to this idea of what do you guys want to do for your projects in this course. At a minimum, my recommendation is 2 to 3 asynchronous check-ins a week. So this isn't you setting aside half an hour to meet with your group. This is within your Discord or your Slack or wherever you're doing your group chain, your group text chain, wherever you guys are sort of meeting and chatting. You just have a quick check-in, and it's asynchronous, which means you don't actually have to all be in the same spot at the same time, but rather on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you expect to get a text in that text chain from everybody. Each person does their own, saying what they finished, what they haven't finished, what's going on, what they're going to work on, stuff like that. It keeps us accountable in between iterations. It becomes so easy to ignore this project until the week before the deadline. And if instead we do these check-ins 2 to 3 times a week, we know that we're going to have to say something as we go. And it's okay to say that we didn't work on anything on Monday, and it's okay to say even on Wednesday we still haven't done anything. But if by the 3rd, 4th, 5th check-in you're still saying you haven't done anything, your teammates are going to start to take notice. So it allows you to be accountable. It's just important that you set up the structure at the start of your project. So if you don't have a check-in structure in place yet, this should be your opportunity to reach out to your team and say, let's set up a check-in structure. And anybody on your team can reach out and say that. You don't need to be the unofficial team lead or anything like that. If you're on your team, you have a right to say, okay, I've watched the pre-class videos. There's a suggestion for asynchronous check-ins. Let's do them on Mondays and Thursdays. Whatever it might be, pick 2 days, and the expectation is every single person will write a message into your group chat saying what they've done since the last check-in and what they intend to do before the next check-in. And for the last time, your reminder is it's okay to say nothing. It's okay to say, hey, the next check-in in 3 days, I have a term test. There's no way I'm going to get anything done. Just a heads up. Don't think I'm working on it because I won't be. That's okay. No problem. It's not about completing stuff to great extents every single time. It's just about having those opportunities to check in and keep each other in the loop with where things are at. Now, this idea of weekly check-ins, like I said, at the start of each iteration, you're gonna want to set some kind of a planning meeting. You may have some time in class potentially to do this. You may need to book an hour outside of class time. If you're really feeling gung-ho, doing weekly check-ins regardless of due dates is always a really good idea. But I recognize that can't always happen in our group projects. All right. So speaking of these check-ins, what is some of the information that we can actually talk about in them? Well, there's this idea of tracking velocity, and it's basically a rough measure of how much our team accomplished in a week or in a sprint. And there are lots of different ways to track it. Things like the number of completed GitLab issues, the merged pull requests, the commits that are tied to meaningful progress. Maybe you have a checklist of items in your planning doc that you can say you finished. But basically, it just comes down to saying, what did we finish this week, right? If you finish a bunch of stuff and it's really impressive, and then next week you do this exact same thing and you realize you've created 70 tech debt tickets and 4 bugs, did we really get that much great stuff done? I don't know, right? So being able to track this information is really going to help us long-term see where our pain points are at. It allows us to plan better and also spot those blockers. If all of a sudden we do realize that we have people on our team who are getting lots done, but they are creating a lot of tech debt and not addressing it, we can plan for that. We can spot it early on and help those people and support them better without, reaching the very last due date and suddenly having spaghetti code in front of us. So while you're working in these iterations, it's really important that you consider each of these iterations or each week a mini project effectively, right? Because we want to be able to demo something at the end of it. We want to have a working product. For each of your due dates in this course, you do submit your work, right? Like your instructor, myself, the graders, whoever it will be, is going to actually go in and run your project. So it is like a mini project due at each of these checkpoints, at each of these milestones. So we really want to make sure we're prioritizing small, finishable tasks that we can sort of build on, and that way we have something demoable by the check-in date. We always need to make sure, though, that when we're doing this, when we're working through our iterations, that we're leaving time for testing our code, reviewing those pull requests, and then our refactor and maybe even some cleanup, right? Not just building, implementation, moving on. There's a lot of other pieces that come with writing good quality code that we need to build in. If you're gonna spend 20 minutes writing code, between the testing of it, refactoring of it, the code reviews, double your time. Double it. Anticipate doubling it. Now, the biggest thing that happens every single term without fail is this merge everything at midnight problem, right? If we're working in our iterations, we have clear sprint goals, we know that we're going to have check-in days, we know what time we want to spend doing different parts of the work, we can avoid this merge everything at midnight problem. This last minute chaos always results in bugs, burnout, busted builds, distrust, all these different pieces, right? Instead, we want to merge early, merge often, and build that review time in. In fact, my recommendation for most groups is that they actually set a cutoff date of when they're going to merge everything working in, and then they can spend the last 3-4 days of the iteration cleaning up their tech debt. Because cleaning up tech debt does not change functionality. So you get all your new functionality in the first week or 2 weeks or whatever it is, and then you spend the final week doing merges into main, not into a side branch or anything, merging your code into main through merge requests, but they're all refactors, they're all tech debt related, so that you have nice clean code, you have a good test suite that you know already made sure that you're not going to break your code with your refactors, right? We can set up this really beautiful working system. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what a sprint should look like, what an iteration should look like, because this is one of the biggest problems that often happen. This video is sort of supposed to help us as we're approaching this iterations due date here with understanding what we might want our iterations to look like. We want to make sure we're always communicating blockers early. If we do a lot of research and we still can't figure it out, tell somebody. If you don't know how to use GitHub and you tried and you're struggling, tell somebody. I cannot tell you how many people just don't end up using GitHub at the end of the term because they were too nervous to let somebody know. Every group will have somebody who needs a little extra help. Every group will have somebody who can provide that extra help. Everybody has their own strengths at different points in time with different concepts and topics. Lean on each other and use each other, right? And certainly do not take any silent shortcuts. So if you're going to make a shortcut, make it known. Make sure you're communicating it, saying, listen, I know that this isn't going to be exactly what we want, but I'm going to structure it like this for now, and then next week after my term test in databases, I'm gonna be able to put some time toward doing it the way we want it, right? Communicate these things to each other and make sure that you're using those merge requests as an opportunity to communicate about code, to discuss code. It's not just a code dump. It's not spend 2 weeks in a branch, dump it all into a merge request, hope to merge it in. That's not gonna work, right? We really wanna make sure we're setting up a nice structured approach to solving these problems. So imagine day one, sprint planning, our project kicks off, it's the start of an iteration. A really good idea is to sit down with your group, like I said, half an hour, and define your goals. Who's gonna work on what? What are we hoping to see that we're getting done? What are the different aspects of each of those features that we wanna work on that we may need to discuss as a group? Then early in this week or early in your iteration, we have our first check-in. Have you done any of the work yet? What are you planning to work on? If you've done work, have you hit any blockers? Are your blockers things like other courses right now, right? Like those can be blockers too. I can't work on this because I have to finish this assignment for Wednesday for Automata, right? Like those are blockers and that's okay, but we want to communicate them. This asynchronous check-in is some kind of a post or a message, one per person on the team, Everybody is responsible for writing their own and posting it. It keeps you accountable. It also allows you to come and tell your instructor if somebody is just not pulling their weight because they're not responding, they're not posting their asynchronous check-ins, whatever it might be. And even if the check-in says, I did nothing, I plan to do nothing, I'll see you guys in 2 check-ins, it keeps that momentum going, it keeps you aware of it. Mid-sprint, whenever that is, maybe it's at the end of the first week, maybe it's halfway through the week, it just depends on your sprint length. This is when we want to make sure that core features have been started being built and that those tests are already being written for them. We don't want to leave our testing till the end, because if we find a bug, once all of our code is written and scaffolded and structured, it can be so tricky to go back and fix it, right? The recommendation in real life would be to pair up and review each other's pull requests or PRs, MRs, same thing, pull request, merge request. But actually pair up with each other in your group and review each other's code. But I recognize that might not always be something that can be done, but perhaps every single sprint, 1 or 2 people are responsible for looking at the merge requests for that week, right? That's okay too. We can sort of assign roles as they make sense there. As you're heading out of the midpoint, you're gonna have another asynchronous check-in, right? Here's where we can have an update on our project. We can reassign work if somebody is stuck and not moving anywhere, or we can adjust and somebody else can tag team and help out on work if somebody is getting stuck. And then within our final week, this is sort of that code freeze point that I was talking about, right? At this point, we're doing our refactors, we're testing, we're reviewing, we're preparing our documentation for our final check-in, for our submission. This is our opportunity to really make sure that things are tight in the way we want them to be. We can have our asynchronous, our third asynchronous check-in within a given period, where we just have a quick state of where things are at. Is everybody wrapping up okay? Are all tests passing? Did anybody commit anything that might break anything? Anything that's not finished or anything that might need to be pushed to the next iteration can be discussed at this point as well. And then finally, at the end of our sprint, we have our review. This is when we demo our projects for each other in our class. Really, you're demoing it for your instructor, for me, whoever. And by demo, I mean I'll just run it, or your instructor will just run it. I don't mean you have to stand there and demo it usually. But in the real world, if there's lots of teams in like a development group, each team can demo the things that they've been working on. It's an opportunity to reflect as a team. Did things go well? What went well? What didn't go well? Why? What can we do better, right? We can have a team retrospective, and we can plan for our next iteration. So now that we've completed our iteration, we can take some time to decide, okay, what is it that we want to do in the next sprint? How do we want these sort of time points to look for our next chunk of code? So before you go back out into your groups and continue working on your code, you should take a moment to think about some questions here, including what role on your team are you most comfortable with? Maybe you're really comfortable with writing documentation, or maybe you're a terrible writer and do not want to do that. Maybe you're really comfortable being like the bossy leader, that's me, and like making sure people are doing their check-ins and that all the documentation is up to snuff and everybody's tracking things. Or maybe you'd way rather just be a coder and, you know, push out code really quickly, get stuff done. Ask yourself sort of what are your skills and what are you most comfortable with? This isn't just a good exercise for this class, but it's a good exercise for the future, because you're going to have to put this on your resume, and these are things you're going to want to be able to talk about. What role would challenge you to grow? So whichever roles you just told yourself, well, I know I definitely don't want to do that, that is the role that would challenge you. And you really want to dig in and ask yourself why. Why don't I want to do that? Is it because I don't like being confrontational? Is it because I'm not confident in my development skills? Is it because I don't really understand GitHub and I just want to run away from it, right? Ask yourself why that role would challenge you, and really see if you can figure out what are some skills or concepts that you might want to be able to grow and learn. How does your team handle feedback, and are you getting enough of it and early enough? If you answer your team does not handle feedback at all, or they handle it poorly, or it's a fight, are you getting it early enough? If you're not getting any feedback, or it doesn't come until 14 hours before the deadline, this is your opportunity to go talk to your team about it, or talk to your instructor if you're really stuck. And lastly, are you planning your work with testing and review in mind? Most likely, many of you are not yet including those, and like I said, double it. Whatever time you're estimating to work on an item, if If you're saying, I think it'll take me about 4 hours to complete this feature, double it. Take that and add 4 more hours for planning out your work, writing your tests, doing the code reviews, making the code review changes from your teammates. Double those times so that you're never feeling like you're very stressed for time or you're not sure what to do when you go over. I'd way rather, especially early on, that you are overestimating, and as time goes on, you get a lot better at that. And with that, we're all done week 4. We're finished off talking about exceptional code, technical debt, avoiding it, and how we can work as a team to make this project as smooth as possible. Hopefully you'll take a moment to pause and reflect, and I will see you all in next week's videos. Bye.